Hello and welcome to Common Knowledge. On previous episodes, we've looked at the current Pauper ban list, as well as cards I'd consider banning in Pauper. So it only makes sense to end this trilogy by taking a look at some cards that I think could potentially be added to the format. Every once in a while, Wizards will downshift a card that was previously uncommon, or sometimes even rare, down to common, to better fit the drafting environment of whatever set they're making. But once a card gets a common printing, even an online one, the card becomes fully legal in Pauper. Cards like Battle Screech, Lead the Stampede, and Cast Down all started their lives at higher rarities, but once downshifted, have become staples of the format. So what cards not currently Pauper legal can be added to the pool? Here are some of my picks. Let's start things off with an easy one. Boil. Boil is 3 and a red for an instant. Destroy all islands. Okay, I'm kidding on this one. I don't think we need to hate blue that much. But I'm willing to listen if you feel differently. All right, our first real downshift candidate is a Johnny's Pridemate. Johnny's Pridemate is 1 and a white for a 2/2 cat soldier. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. There are a lot of impactful life gain cards already being played in the Pauper format. Weather the Storm and Campfire are used to slow down lightning-fast mono-red piles, and there are a number of decks that either build around food synergies or at the very least make food tokens incidentally. And yet there aren't really many life gain payoff cards in Pauper. Celestial Unicorn and Blood Researcher both are Pauper legal, but their 3-mana casting costs are just too slow to really see any play. The 2-mana of Johnny's Pridemate would be a signature card in a potential new life gain archetype for the format, or could potentially find a home in mono-white heroic shells. Pridemate feels like a card that should have already been put at common a long time ago, as it's been consistently power crept by new variants in Standard and Commander. Let this card gain a new life in Pauper, and get a +1/+1 counter when it does. Another white card I'd like to see in Pauper is Annex Century. Annex Century is 2 and a white for a 1/4 artifact creature Phyrexian Cleric with Toxic 1, and when this creature enters, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until this creature leaves the battlefield. While Journey to Nowhere is a Pauper staple, we don't have a ton of these Oblivion Ring style effects on creatures in the Pauper format. Alabaster Host Intercessor and Faceless Butcher is about all we get. Mesmeric Fiend kind of does this too, but that only works for cards in an opponent's hand, not on the battlefield. Annex Century would allow for some interesting counterplay to Affinity and Jund Wildfire decks, stealing artifact lands, at least until the creature was dealt with. While not as powerful or definitive as Dust to Dust, it would allow more aggressive white decks some removal while still contributing to the board. And hey, it's an artifact itself, so that could potentially help your strategy. Perhaps White Weenie or Orzhov Blade would be willing to give a card like this a try? I'm not sure, but I had a great time playing this during its stay in Standard, and I think its drawback to only hitting things 3 mana or less would give it a different lane to play in than that of Journey to Nowhere. Now, how do we feel about Clone? Clone is 3 and a blue for a 0/0 creature shapeshifter. You may have this creature enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. It feels weird to me that Pauper is missing out on such a cornerstone of Magic design. Is Clone really too strong for Pauper? What about Mirror Image that can only copy creatures you control? What about Omni Changeling that comes with a higher mana cost but also Convoke and Changeling? What creatures in Pauper are so scary that Clone can't be downshifted? Or is this effect simply too weird and complicated for draft environments, so it's never been able to get a common printing? Do I think Clone would shake up Pauper all that much? No, probably not. Maybe it could be a sideboard piece against Ramp or Monstertron decks, allowing blue to match the big haymakers of those other archetypes. But mostly, I just think the format would be more fun with Clone in it. And I like fun. Here's a card you probably haven't thought of much. It's Topplegeist. Topplegeist is a single white mana for a 1/1 spirit creature with flying. And when this creature enters, tap target creature an opponent controls. It also has Delirium. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, tap target creature that player controls. This is another potential tool for Orzhov Blade decks, and I think Topplegeist offers a good balance of value without totally skewing the format like a downshift of Nurturing Pixie definitely would. Topplegeist gives you an evasive creature to put on the board early and flip into an Orokusaki, or a Mukotai Ambusher, or even a Leonardo, much like the mono blue fairies can get to Ninja of the Deep Hours on turn 2. But Topplegeist, unlike many of those other 1/1 white flyers that don't see play in Pauper, has some utility in the mid and late game. Topplegeist Enters trigger works a lot like Network Disruptor, helping clear the way for attacks. And its repeatable Delirium ability provides some real survivability at the later part of the game when your opponent has a big threat. And Topplegeist isn't an artifact, meaning Glinthawk and Refurbished Familiar heavy decks would have to make a real choice on whether this inclusion would be worth it. Even if it doesn't see play in these decks, Topplegeist has the versatility to find room in other potential archetypes, and that's why I'd like to see it come to common. Let's talk about an old favorite of mine, Emissary of Despair. Emissary of Despair is 1 in double black for a 2/1 spirit creature with flying, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses 1 life for each artifact they control. As we're all painfully aware, artifact strategies are very strong in Pauper. Artifact lands and cards that produce multiple artifacts like Blood Fountain open the way for early Refurbished Familiars and a rough time. And while we have some tools to stop or slow these decks down, like Dust to Dust, Cast into the Fire, and Mass Vandal, those cards all remove artifacts from the game entirely. What I like about Emissary of Despair is it punishes people for playing artifacts in a different way. When Emissary of Despair came out in Darksteel, it was a card meant to curb some of the broken affinity strategies Mirrodin had caused. Unfortunately, it couldn't stem the tidal wave back then, but I think it could be a nice sideboard piece today. A combat damage trigger and only 1 toughness probably make it pretty difficult to pull off, but black decks have the creature removal to hopefully open the way for Emissary to swing in for damage and its trigger. If anything, it would at least require affinity decks to deal with it, maybe even trading their own Refurbished Familiar in the process, and that might just be enough. Here's a trio of stone cold uncommon classics that would cause no trouble in Pauper: Flametongue Kavu, Sengir Vampire, and Serra Angel. Flametongue Kavu is 3 in a red for a 4/2 Kavu creature. When this creature enters, it deals 4 damage to target creature. Sengir Vampire is 3 in double black for a 4/4 vampire with flying, and whenever a creature dealt damage by this creature this turn dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And Serra Angel is 3 in double white for a 4/4 angel with flying and vigilance. I don't really have much to say about these 3. I don't think any of them would see serious play in Pauper, but I do think they're all iconic Magic cards, and Pauper would at least offer a new venue for them to see some play. Speaking of classics, let's talk about Necrotol next. Necrotol is 2 in double black for a 2/1 human assassin with first strike, and when this creature enters, destroy target non-artifact non-black creature. That creature can't be regenerated. Especially with the release of Anchovy and Banana Pizza in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set, I think Necrotol would be a fine addition to the Pauper card pool. It has the same mana cost and a similar yet weaker effect, but it's strapped to a pretty decent body for both attacking and blocking. It could be an expensive but interesting inclusion into Blink and Bounce decks that could be sideboarded in or out depending on the matchup. In fact, my only real concern is that maybe Necrotol is too weak for Pauper. Should we be considering Ravenous Chupacabra instead? Let's switch things up with a land. Pit of Offerings is a land cave that enters tapped, and when this land enters, exile up to 3 target cards from graveyards. And you can tap it for colorless or tap it for 1 mana of any of the exiled cards' colors. Now, Bojuka Bog has ruled the roost when it comes to land-based graveyard hate at common, but I think Pit of Offerings has a few interesting things going for it. It exiles up to 3 cards, that's more than Fairy Macabre, but less than Bog, and it can be more easily run in decks that don't use black. It also can be a bit of a mana fixer in the right situation, and it can require you to make tough choices about whether to exile your own cards to get the right colors that you need. And it's a cave. We currently have 7 cave lands in Pauper, a cycle of Discover lands, a mana filter, and a fetch land. Not quite enough to make a cave sub-theme really work, but Pit of Offerings gets us closer to that environment being a reality. Pit of Offerings is a cool card that currently doesn't have much of a home outside of some really light commander play, and Pauper could be a really nice landing spot for it. Reclamation Sage and its newer cousin Chomping Changeling seem well suited to the Pauper environment. Reclamation Sage is 2 in a green for a 2/1 Elf Shaman, and when this creature enters, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Chomping Changeling is much the same, 2 in a green, this time for a 1/2 Shapeshifter with Changeling, and when this creature enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. Either or both of these cards could see play as sideboard pieces against Bogles, White Heroic, or Artifact decks. And unlike many of the naturalized variants we have in the format, these come on bodies that can be found with cards like Winding Way and Lead the Stampede. What 2 decks play both of those cards? Elves and Slivers. Rex Sage goes nicely into one, and Chomping Changeling fits well in either. Last up is Unctis's Retrofitter. For 2 and a blue, you get a 2/3 Phyrexian Artificer with Toxic 1, and when this creature enters, up to one target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4 for as long as this creature remains on the battlefield. This one might just be for me, but I love animating artifacts. I have a Dimir Blink deck that uses Kenku Artificer and Dai Indoctrination to animate indestructible artifact lands like Mistvault Bridge, but there really aren't that many effects that make this work in Pauper. Unctis's Retrofitter is a good candidate for downshifting because of its advantages as well as its drawbacks. The Retrofitter has a better body than Kenku, and its Toxic 1 may be halfway useful in some poison decks. It also works on any artifact, including ones that are already creatures. But unlike Kenku, its animation ability doesn't grant flying, and it only sticks around as long as the Retrofitter does, making it pretty easy to disrupt. Unctis's Retrofitter gives cards like Nutrient Block even more value, and could revive a card like Darksteel Axe in the format as well. So what do you think? Are these cards good candidates for the Pauper format? Would they make enough waves? Too many waves? And what other cards would you like to see get downshifted to common rarity? Let me know in the comments below.